Petoskey for October 16th, 2023. I ask that you rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Ms. Beth, would you call roll?
Gilmore, present. Shields,
Here.
Wagner,
Here.
Walker, present. Murphy.
Present, we have a quorum. Next, I'd like to make a proclamation. It's Walk Against Hate Week, October 16th to the 23rd, 2023. Walk Against Hate Week. Whereas the health and well-being of a free and just democracy depends on the respectful interaction and cooperation of all citizens. And whereas hate in all forms, including religious bigotry, racism, and extremism, corrode the fundamentals of equality and human rights in a democracy. And whereas incidences of hate, divisiveness, and violence have increased throughout the world and also in our country in recent years. And whereas the Anti-Defamation League is a global leader in battling hate and bias in all forms to protect democracy and to ensure a just and inclusive society for all. And whereas the ADL is sponsoring walks against hate throughout communities across the United States on Sunday, October 22nd, including here in the city of Petoskey beginning at 2 p.m. in Pennsylvania Park. Whereas the city of Petoskey and its citizens embrace the concept of peace, civility, and liberty and justice for all. And whereas there be resolved that I, John Murphy, Mayor of Petoskey, on behalf of all residents, do hereby proclaim October 16th to the 23rd, 2023 as Walk Against Hate Week. I also want to add that there are two other events going on. That event starts at 2 o'clock at Pennsylvania Park a week from on the 23rd, this coming Sunday. 22nd, excuse me. And also it will start at 2 o'clock at Pennsylvania Park and will end up here at the waterfront at Festival Gazebo area. And 3 o'clock will be a few words and a wrap up. Also, I'm going to have, could you step up, Charlie, to the mic? He will give you the other activity that is happening on a Tuesday.
There. This Thursday at the Carnegie Library, 7 p.m., Irene Miller, who is a 94-year-old Holocaust survivor, will be making a presentation. She has spoken here locally before, and she's right on top of things at the age of 94. So if you've never had the opportunity to hear her speak before, I'm sure you'll find it really engaging and very interesting and educational. So just a couple of words from the organizing committee, who really wanted to be here and forced to thank you all for this proclamation, but I was the only one that was available. Excuse me. Hate is a purely human phenomena. No other living species knows or understands hatred. As old as Eden's apple, hate is born of ignorance and sustained anger, bitterness, and resentment. Hatred is weakness of reason, character, and morality. Hate begets hate, but otherwise accomplishes nothing. It corrodes the spirit, clouds judgment, and destroys everything good. Life is a wonderful opportunity to find peace, accomplishment, and happiness. Fulfilling that challenge requires patience, dedication, purpose, and love. A loving heart alone cannot defeat hate. A world without hate also requires equal measures of charity, education, fairness, justice, and empathy. Hating is an easy choice. Overcoming hate takes courage, inspiration, cooperation, resolve, and hard work. With these tools, hate must be repelled. No other path is worthwhile. No other planting will bear fruit. So thank you again for the proclamation. Hope you're all able to attend on Sunday down in Festival Park. Charlie Millard will be playing as a part of a celebration of the event. So we look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks again.
June mentioned another choir was the Interfaith.
Oh, that event. Yes, sorry. That would be tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the Presbyterian Church. The Interfaith group is sponsoring a vigil for both Israel and the Palestinians. And I think it's an event that we'll all want to make as well. So thank you.
Just wanted to say thank you on behalf of Temple B'nai Israel for supporting Walk Against Hate and for the temple. Thank you. I'm Lauren Blanford. Yes, no worries. Thank you.
Good morning. Start regular business, and the first is the public hearing to receive the comments concerning the program and services as proposed by the city downtown management board for 2024 and recommended for financing by the use of a special assessment method at a 5% rate increase compared to the 2023 formula. I'll turn it over to city manager for. Does anybody have any comments, public comments? I don't see any.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. So this is obviously a multi-step process. So based on action of City Council at our last meeting, we have sent out public hearing notices. Were mailed on October 3rd, alerting folks of this public hearing. So as you mentioned, Mayor, programs and services are financed by levying a special assessment. The board did approve a 5% rate adjustment compared to the 2023 formula. And then we have we'll schedule a public hearing on October 16th to receive comments concerning these, that's today, programs and services budget. So that, again, those notices were mailed on the 3rd. Those special assessments would provide $118,487 in revenue, which is about a $5,600 increase from the prior year based on the 5% increase. So should council move forward, the next step would be to approve the proposed programs and services for 2024, establish the assessment district, and then direct staff to prepare a special assessment role for presentation to City Council at the next meeting.
Would be no public comment. We'll move on and we will hit this up at old business in a couple of minutes. That's the consent agenda. It's the adoption of a proposed resolution that would confirm approval of the following. October 2nd, 2023, regular session City Council meeting minutes, as well as acknowledge a receipt of a report concerning certain administrative transactions that have occurred since October 2, 2023. I take it the council for possible motion or questions or changes. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I just have a question as a point of clarification in the minutes of October 2 on our page 11. So this was at the bottom of the page. This is reporting on the motion by Ms. Walker and supported by Mr. Wagner about the 1% addition. My question is this, in the motion, it was added to revise the penalty for summer taxes from 4% to 3%. But that's not in the text of the resolution. Does it need to be?
We can certainly add that. We did find out after our meeting and conferring with Mary Mitchell, county treasurer, that she kind of reminded us that the penalty is in our charter at that level. So we cannot by resolution change that percentage. We can certainly proceed with the adoption of the just lost my thought here. 1%, thank you. But the penalty would be an amendment to the charter, and we'd have to go through that process. But you are correct. We can add that to the minutes because we did discuss it, but we cannot move forward just based on a resolution changing that penalty percentage.
Okay, I was just seeking clarification.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Wagner,
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second, Mayor.
I have a motion from Mr. Wagner and a second from Mr. Walker. Any other discussion? I go to City Clerk Beck for roll.
Wagner.
Yes.
Walker. Yes. Shields.
Yes.
Demore. Aye. Murphy.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Next is public comments. This is your opportunity to address city council, not the audience. To address city council with any comment or question that you have at this point. Please give us your full name and full address at the mic or online if you wish to speak. Is there anyone wish to speak to council tonight? For being there and as well as the audience. So we'll move now to number 8 on the agenda, which is the city manager's updates, and I'll turn that over to City Manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. So a few things to highlight this evening. A couple other public meetings this week. Tomorrow night, we have the Downtown Management Board meeting. Based on their agenda, they will be going over their routine monthly committee reports. Planning Commission also meets this week on Wednesday, the 18th at 6 o'clock. There is a rezoning request for a vacant parcel fronting that fronts Petoskey Street south of Sheridan. That would be rezoning from R3 to RM2. And then they would also be having a discussion regarding Crestview Commons. This is the Petoskey Town Center. When we worked with the owner developer with the PetSmart addition, we also talked about potentially converting some of the excess parking into outlots or building pads for future development. So they will be talking about that conceptually as the Planning Commission. Should have blown this up a little bit more. Sorry about that.
She can.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right.
So this is our end of September tallies, if you will, from a code enforcement standpoint. So you can see what our numbers were in September and then the running total since Tony came on board. So there's still the issues this summer, obviously, with grass and weeds kept us fairly busy. That's obviously will be slowing down, and we'll move on to other maybe more important things. Miscellaneous kind of covers. Can you slide up a little bit? There's a definition there. Thank you. Miscellaneous kind of covers illegal camping, noise, operating food truck without license, merchandise on sidewalk, dumpster violations, animals. So it's kind of a catch-all category, if you will. We have gotten very active on short-term rental, illegal short-term rental listings. We've done a lot of work on behind the scenes, looking at those and getting notices out and getting those removed. Sign violations continue to be a big one as well as on-street parking with trailers, boats, campers, et cetera, on the street. So we've to this point closed 255 incidents out of 278 total incidents. Currently have 23 open, and you can see the breakdown. Self-initiated by code enforcement officer himself, and then those that are complaint driven. And what we find typically is when we have a complaint, we typically find violations as well when we're researching those initial complaints. So that's kind of the tally as it stands through September. Yeah. That might have been my last slide. I don't recall. There we go. And did want to highlight our new PSO, Public Safety Officer, Michael Dolan. Michael comes to us from New Baltimore, 6 years of service there. He's got family up in this area, so he didn't have to necessarily find housing, which is a plus, obviously. So he brings with him a good amount of experience and was also a field training officer as well. So you can see Sarah was swearing him in earlier this month, and those that came out to support. A few other things, obviously the end of this month on the 28th, that's Saturday from 10 to 12, we will be closing downtown streets, excuse me, for our parade, trick-or-treating parade that will start at 10 a.m. Our lineup at Central Elementary School at 9:45. The parade will start at 10 and march from Central Elementary down Howard to Pennsylvania Park. And really, we looked at just for the safety of the trick-or-treaters. Director Carr was pretty involved in looking at the safety, and we decided just to close the streets, just to allow families to be able to get through without dealing with cars going in and through downtown. So that'll be from 10 to 12 on Saturday, the 28th. And then we're thrilled to be at this point of the process. This has been a long road as well. We're finally there with the lofts at Lumber Square, and looking forward to celebrating their groundbreaking on Friday, the 3rd of November at 11 o'clock. And I'm told it'll be sunny and 75. So no need to wear any coats or anything. So we're looking forward to that. That's, again, there's been a lot of folks involved in that process, as there has been with the Maple Block. So it's something that hopefully we can look back on and be able to watch the vertical construction going up and just kind of all take part in that celebration. So we're excited about that. That's it for me. Happy to answer any questions.
Council, do you have any questions? Mr. Moore?
As far as the building pads at Crestview Commons, those are anticipated to be for.
There's nothing actually percolating right now. I think what John Eichelangeli was trying to work with the developer and owner on was, I believe there's probably almost 100 excess parking spaces than what we need there. And instead of just having, an asphalt jungle there, could we potentially look at some out parcels that would be usable space that we could, do some construction, bring more retail opportunities to the community. But there's nothing that's driving that necessarily. We're just trying to nudge the owner to consider something to really avoid the gluttony of parking that's in that area.
And then also, could we get a copy of that code enforcement data?
Yes, I'm sorry. I meant to print it off,
Okay.
and I can try to do that before you leave.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Walker.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for your report, Shane.
Yeah.
Could you go back to that slide where you were talking about the rezoning of what address of what part property?
Yes, there's probably nothing on the slide that's gonna be, I did bring that with me.
Is that perhaps the Salvation Army building on Spring Street?
Nope, so this is off of East Sheridan.
Oh, thank you.
That last stretch of Petoskey.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple other multifamily apartments in that area.
I'm familiar.
This owner is looking to purchase the vacant parcel and do a small multifamily apartment complex. I can pass this down to you.
Which side of Petoskey Street is it on?
So this would be,
Try to Sheridan be the.
yeah, the
north side.
west, the
North.
west side of Petoskey, South Sheridan.
North side of Sheridan Street. There's no room for any other development on the south side. Past Clarion.
Other questions?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
So that was for the East Sheridan, and then, could you tell me, just going back to when that Kmart Plaza was developed? Clearly, it was developed with a certain amount of parking per the development, so have those policies and ordinances changed?
Yes.
Then, okay, so that would be the request for repurposing parking because the zoning has changed in terms of parking requirements of what's required now for in-city residential or commercial.
Yes.
Development.
Yes.
Okay, I understand that. And then I did have a second question, but I
Go
forgot
ahead.
what
No,
slide it was.
let's hear it.
Sorry.
So,
Could you go back to your slides again?
Yeah.
I got it in a minute, so
Oh.
hold on.
Forgive me.
It's on yours.
That's- What, do you remember what category, what topic?
I don't, that's fine, I can.
No, I.
Oh.
I'll ask one of them.
Yeah.
I'll ask one of
in
them.
the meantime, I'll call just more.
Thank you, thank you.
Just for
Question.
constituent information, oops, sorry, for constituent information, do you know what streets are gonna be closed downtown for the kids for
Oh.
Halloween?
Becky, do you happen to know?
In the downtown, it's gonna be just like sidewalk sales. Our individual,
Like,
like. Just like we do the sidewalk sale, that's it,
Okay, Howard Mitchell Lake,
right?
thank you.
Which.
no, can you go through them? I'm sorry, I apologize.
No.
Code enforcement?
Yes, thank you. Of course, it was code enforcement question. So just for clarification, international property code maintenance violations can be both residential, commercial, downtown, retail, vacant buildings.
Yes,
So-
all of the above.
And people are welcome through the process on our website to file an anonymous international property maintenance code violation for any buildings, whether they live next to them or they're a city resident or they're a business owner or they're a downtown business that's renting a property, for example. So
Yes,
anybody's welcome to file one of those.
yes.
I would
And-
say hearsay though is not probably the best thing to put on there though, if it's a hearsay. I heard somebody told me that such and such.
Sure.
I would be as concrete as possible.
So anybody that's filing an international property maintenance code violation should be as clear and concrete as possible and provide as much information on the website when they're filing that.
True.
Okay, great. And I think that was all my questions. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Moore, you had another one? No?
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll go for move on then. We're all good. Anybody in the public wish to make a comment on the city manager's updates? There being none. We're gonna move to old business. It's the adoption of a proposed resolution that will approve of programs and services established an assessment district and direct that the assessment will be prepared for subsequent review by the city council. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions that are for my own learning. And I see that there's a second public hearing scheduled or to be or could be scheduled for November 20th. So is the scope of that second hearing if people want to dispute a particular assessment or? That's my question.
Yes, that is the reason for that second public hearing, yes.
So without,
I'm still learning my process myself, so I appreciate your patience with me.
That's what we're trying to order. But I believe the first one is public hearing on the actual programs and services, which was tonight. And then you guys direct staff to prepare the role, proposed role. And that'll be the next meeting. And the assessor kind of certifies it. And then the public hearing is where there's a public hearing on the actual role. And if anyone, maybe has an issue with the rate or maybe their square footage or something like that. And then if that gets approved, then the assessment invoice actually goes out to all the property owners.
So tonight, if someone wanted to say I shouldn't be on the roll, that would be this evening because we're establishing the role.
Possibly, yes, or they're questioning, right, why they
And
on it, or what are they paying for, or if they're in the district or something like that.
And everybody that's on the roll got mailed public notice of this hearing.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions, council? Do I have a possible motion? Mr. Shields,
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed programs and services for 2024, establish the assessment district and direct city staff to prepare a special assessment role.
Support.
a motion from Mr. Shields, a second from Ms. Demore. Any other discussion, questions? Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I did notice, upon review, just looking at the budget compared from last year's 2023, well, 2022, 2023, and now the 2024 budget. I know that, at the last meeting, when we discussed this, Becky explained that the Downtown Management Board had voted to move the parking fund monies over into the revenue for the Downtown Management Board. And then also, when we look at the expenses for this year in administrative, unlike previous years, there's a cost for 2024 of $107,000, which is exactly the amount that was moved over from the parking fund to the general budget. And this is for the Lake Street office and staff. And in previous years, it was only budgeted at $200. So I guess I had questions about why in previous years, when the administrative was housed in the Park Avenue or the Howard Street property, there were no expenses, but now since the rental of the unit on Lake Street, we're now up to $107,000 a year, and that's exactly the amount that the parking fund brought over. And so now the budget has almost doubled for 2024. So we're dealing with a budget of $315,000 a year compared to $161 for 2023 and $143 for 2022.
Miss, could you take the
Thank you.
podium and
So what the Management Board is trying to do is make it clear here that it's time to split the marketing and events promotions budgets away from the parking fund. So when we have this office on Lake Street, that $107,000 includes the office rent for Lake Street, and it also includes the salary for the person who works there, for Andy. So they're not actually going to be able to take that out of programs and services here. This is like a token gesture saying at some point, we've got to make this happen. And in order to make it happen, they're going to have to raise the assessment humongous amount of money or find money some other way to take it out of the programs and services fund. But this is their first step, and it's very transparent. And it may even seem meaningless to some degree because it's still being paid for out of the parking fund, but it is being shown that it's going to come out of programs and services. It's,
Thank you for explaining.
oh,
And
but
the raise, the council gave a directive that we approved parking rate increases with the understanding that that extra amount of money that was to be raised was to go into a separate restricted account for increased parking, a parking ramp.
right.
That's continuing, isn't it?
Yes, it's continuing. It's not a separate fund. It's the carryover that you see at the end of the budget or the end of the year, every single year.
Yeah.
It's all kept in the same account or the same fund, but
Okay, I
that's,
just wanted to make
yeah.
sure. Council,
there's no doubt, though, that the expenses of operations are going up with a new parking director, with a new marketing director, and an eventual new downtown manager. So
Thank you for the clarity.
thank you. Any other questions? I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Shields.
Yes.
Dimore. Aye. Wagner.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Next, the adoption of the proposed resolution approving the implementation agreement for the Eagle Grant and Loan for Maple Rock Flats project and authorize the mayor and city manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the city. I turn it over to City Manager Horn for information.
Thank you, Mayor. This has obviously been on our. Sorry, you all right? All choked up. Obviously, this has been something that we've been working on collaboratively for a number of weeks now. The city attorney and myself had a productive call and conversation with the developer and his team about kind of clarifying and solidifying some potential legal concerns, issues within the implementation agreement that in our mind, we feel has been addressed. Obviously, there's things within this agreement that are outside of the city attorney and myself's control. It's more of, obviously, it's a city council decision. But I think, but from our standpoint, we believe from a legal standpoint that this addresses some of the concerns that were issued by council. We also think that we've made some movement in addressing some of your concerns just from the longevity of the brownfield overall from 30 years to 22 years, which was a concern as well by city council that was raised. The developer will lock in those AMI units for the entire 22-year period of the brownfield as well. Really, Exhibit A kind of talks through kind of what we've talked about, as a body and your direction, I believe, from two city staff. So I think we're at a position now where we'll obviously take your feedback, and this is something that's been in the works for a number of weeks again, and based on your input and the city attorney and myself's involvement, I think we're at a point where this document is ready for your consideration.
Also, any discussions, comments? If not, I ask if there is an interest in a motion. Mr. Moore.
So I have a number of questions. So if others would like to go first, or tell me when to stop so they can have a turn.
Go for it.
Okay, all right. So first of all, thank you, Mr. Murray, for all your efforts on behalf of the city on this implementation agreement. So I do have some follow-up questions, and I'll start just where the city manager left off. So I do see the reference to Exhibit A under paragraph A in our packet. It's page 33. Are the terms of Exhibit A that are set forth in the developer's housing commitments incorporated by reference into the implementation agreement? Because it looks like to me it's just referred to.
I was going to mention that Exhibit A are.
Hit your microphone, Jim.
Yeah, exhibit A is really not a legal issue. Those are the business terms of the transaction and. So pay special attention to exhibit A. And they did change the form so that these agreements relate to each other. You know, they can be read as a whole.
Okay.
If that's what your question is.
Yep, whether or not the
But not
terms,
verbatim, but you know, the development is a summary, as it says right there, and those are the essential terms, but.
so like, are they a part of the implementation agreement? That's my
Yes,
question.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. And then beginning with section 2.5 on our page 36. I see that Great Lakes Capital has been added as a financial guarantor.
Correct.
Per paragraph D in section 2.5 of the agreement. I'm going to reference back to our city council resolution on March 20th. When we authorized submittal of the Eagle Brownfield grant and loan. As part of that resolution, it said, quote, the loan would be secured by Great Lakes Capital through a contractual obligation and personal guarantees in the development agreement, end of quote. So my question now is the guarantee by Great Lakes Capital, the LLC, considered a quote unquote personal guarantee?
Yes,
Okay. So I also note that bankruptcy is included in the definition of default in section 1.1L of the agreement. And also later referenced in section 6.2B on page 43. My question is, does the irrevocable letter of credit in the agreement from Maple Block Flats LLC to the city survive a default of bankruptcy?
good question. It is intended to do so. We only received the first page of the letter of credit, so I can't really give an opinion as to the whole letter of credit. Which for the form of this implementation agreement. It may not be perfect, but I'm approving the form because on page 36 in section 2.5, it gives the city the ability to still approve the form. The developer, I think, has been looking through the whole form. I don't think they even had it, but we only have the cover page of it. So the devil's always in the detail, but it is intended to survive bankruptcy.
Okay.
And in a later date, because again, 2.5 says the form similar to what was attached. And that it has to be acceptable to the city. So if it didn't survive bankruptcy, then no, it would not be acceptable to the city.
Okay, thank you. In the event of a bankruptcy default, does Great Lakes Capital LLC remain liable as a financial guarantor to the city under this agreement?
Yes. Now, if they file bankruptcy, you know, they're still covered by the bankruptcy code. I assume did your question mean if Maple Block Flats files bankruptcy?
Well, Great Lakes Capital is the LLC that's the guarantor.
Correct.
So if Great Lakes Capital, the LLC as guarantor becomes a bankrupt, my question is, do they still remain liable to honor that?
Yeah, that's the whole point of the letter of credit. It is supposed to cover that event.
Okay.
But again, it's, you know, I haven't seen the full letter of credit. But B, it's still, you're going to be wrapped up in a bankruptcy there, you know. Either Maple Block Flats or Great Lakes Capital would be, but the intent is to have it survive a bankruptcy.
So is there going to be, or is there a separate guarantee agreement to bind Great Lakes Capital LLC?
No, we talked about that and they're signing this agreement. So this is their binding agreement.
So you consider this sufficient
Yes,
for the guarantor?
yes, they are
Without a separate agreement?
correct.
Okay.
It's kind of form over substance, whether it would be separate or baked in this one.
Okay. Now, my next question pertains to section 2.6 on page 37. This has to do with indemnity. I note in that section, 2.6B, the change that the developer is now required to provide an attorney to the city that is, quote, reasonably satisfactory. That's new language. But the developer still retains the sole right to settle any civil case against the city. So my question is, how does that provision interact with the charter requirement in section 5.4, that it's the duty of the city council to engage legal representation for the city, and I would expect as a corollary to determine whether or not to settle cases filed against the city? I'm just looking to understand the interplay.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a very good answer for that because this contract can't override the charter.
Okay.
So this has to do, similar to your, the city's insurance policy has similar clauses. They get to choose council of choice, not city council. It's a contract that you sign with your insurance company. And if you want a different attorney, they can elect to not cover you. So that there's that interplay. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but certainly this is not an end run around the charter.
In numerous parts of the agreement, the previous reference to development obligations has been changed to brownfield obligations, or brownfield has been added to modify obligations. Does that alter the scope of the developer's obligation, or why was that done? And if you need me to reference some specifics.
They're defined terms, which they put in here, but that wasn't my doing, and I don't know why they changed it, but I didn't see that as a terribly meaningful change to call it brownfield versus, other.
It seemed like it might have narrowed obligations. That's what
The obligation is the obligation, so
okay.
I don't see that narrowing it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had for questions. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Also, any other questions?
I just have a statement for the record, if I could. Sure. Thank you. As previously indicated on the record, I oppose the city of Petoskey acting in the role of a commercial lender by signing and guaranteeing a $1 million loan on behalf of the developer, which this agreement would implement. While this proposed agreement is certainly improved over previous iterations, I still have very real concerns about the terms, particularly the guarantee and indemnity provisions, which I just discussed. Further, Exhibit A to the agreement confirms that the Maple Flats housing commitment will not address 84% of evidence-based housing needs identified in the 2023 Bowen National Research Housing Market Summary. Given all the above, along with the multi-million-dollar investment of public funds and my risks to benefit analysis, I will not vote in support of the proposed implementation agreement. Having said that, I value and respect the expertise and input offered by Susan Wenslick, attorney Jim Murray, and for the developer, Mac McClellan, as well as the perspectives of my fellow council members, all of whom have informed my learning and decision-making. I also acknowledge and appreciate the civility of this process. Over the past meetings, I have enumerated my concerns about this project, and those concerns persist. Having said that, I certainly hope that my concerns are ultimately unfounded and that this development meets or exceeds the expectations of project proponents. Thank you.
All right, so Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have I guess it's a concern because I realize that if city council decides to move forward with this and vote on this evening, that we kind of relinquish any ability to influence or change anything within the grant and loan agreement. So I guess my concerns were starting on page 33. The premise, point C, is that this is to fund environmental response activities. And the scope of work for the environmental response activities in terms of the soil remediation involves removing 10,000 tons of contaminated soil from the site and having that excavated and hauled away to a Class A landfill. My concern is that I think that the person that will be the environmental consultant who will be hired, as outlined on page 34 of this agreement, that they will retain an environmental consulting firm hired by the developer to fulfill all or part of its obligations under this agreement, including the grant and loan eligible activities set forth in the grant and loan agreement and brownfield eligible activities. If the environmental consultant and the brownfield developer decide that indeed that the soil cannot be remediated using photo remediation or a variety of other remediation sciences and techniques that can be utilized, I would certainly hope that they would consider other sources of remediating soil that doesn't involve the extraction and removal of 10,000 tons of soil. And mostly my concerns are because oftentimes this industry is monopolized by one entity in our region. The same entity that performs the excavations, the same entity that does the waste hauling, and the same entity that owns the landfills in our region. This isn't a problem exclusive to our area. This company has secured the landfills for the import of waste from Canada at both borders of our state. And it's a bigger regional and statewide problem. So I would feel remiss if I didn't say something about the problem of providing millions of dollars in contracts to the people that haul and bury this in privately owned landfills in the state of Michigan. And I would really hope that the developer would consider other types of photo remediation and other on-site remediation techniques in the auspice of this grant and development. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to council at this point? Mr. Moore.
Just very briefly, for those who might support the resolution, there's only one thing I would point out, that paragraph 4 references the approval of a planned unit development. And that's actually a conditional approval. Again, that's up to those of you that would desire to support the resolution, whether you'd want to add that amendment.
Are you asking the attorney if that should be in there? Are you asking?
I wasn't trying, what paragraph, you said 4.
In paragraph 4 of the resolution, Mr.
Oh, the resolution.
Yes. Whereas the proposed development is consistent with local development plans and City of Petoskey master plan and zoning ordinance with the approval of a planned unit development. Actually, it's the conditional approval of a planned unit development at this juncture.
That factually, I mean, if that's factually correct, I didn't catch that, then that should probably be clarified. Did the planning commission give a? Where are we with that?
Yeah, there's conditions listed.
Yeah, okay, so a condition, yeah.
11 conditions.
That's true, yeah, and we incorporated them last time. Right. Certainly it would make it possibly even more clear that of the 11 conditions.
So you're saying that
It is what it is. I mean, the approval baked in the 11 conditions. So if you left it alone, it's probably fine. And if you added conditional, it's probably fine. Because it is what it is. I don't think by saying the approval of the PUD means they don't follow the 11 conditions.
council, you wish. Oh, Mr. Shields,
Would you like a motion, Mayor?
please.
Before I make a motion, a quick comment. I say I appreciate Councilwoman Demore's comments and concerns and through this process, and likewise has helped me to dig in and learn aspects of this process. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the concerns, Ms. Walker, that you raised. This isn't without concerns. This isn't without discomfort, but I do support this project, do support this agreement. And think that in this discomfort, this is, in my analysis of cost benefit for our communities, the best decision is to approve and implement this agreement. So I will make a motion to authorize the mayor and city manager to execute the document on behalf of the city.
Are you including the?
I heard that is either or, so I keep it simple,
Leave it out.
leave it out.
Okay. Mr. Wagner, support. Have a motion from Mr. Shields and a second from Mr. Wagner. Other discussions? Public wish to address council on this matter before we vote. Nobody online. How do we know? Do we? I don't want to miss somebody.
No hands.
All right. I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Fields.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Demore.
Nay.
Walker.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Motion passes 4-1. Next is the adoption of a proposed resolution that would approve the early voting site agreement with Emmett County to conduct early voting statewide and federal elections, and to authorize city clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the city. I turn it over to city manager's for information.
Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to our outstanding city clerk for further input on this item.
Well, thank you. So if you don't all know, last November, Michigan voters passed proposal 22-2 and it amended the Constitution, which requires in part that each municipality has to offer early voting. And some of those requirements are 9 consecutive days of early voting, which is the Saturday, 2 Saturdays before, and then ending the Sunday before election day. Each day you have to be open 8 hours. And there's 3 possible ways that you can do the early voting. One, enter into a county agreement, authorize the county to conduct the early voting, enter into a municipal agreement with 1 or more municipalities, or offer early voting as a single municipality. So Emmett County did offer to administer early voting for all 18 jurisdictions in Emmett County, and all 18 clerks have agreed to this. And Susie Canine, the Emmett County clerk, kind of weighed all options along the county, chose the VFW Hall in Harbor Springs around Airport Corners. And it met all the polling place requirements, and actually the only requirement that the state says is that the if the county does the conducting the sole early voting site, that the Emmett County Election Commission has to approve and establish the site, and then that gets sent to the Bureau. Locally, we don't have to approve our election commission that comprises the 3 of us. Did support the recommendation of this contract, and then ultimately brought it to you just for informing, but to ultimate approval if you so wish.
Also, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, Ms. Beck, I had one question. So in the resolution, if we go to the last whereas paragraph, where it's talking about voting dates and times will be posted, okay? But when I read the materials, there's also a provision in 6.3 that seems to require the clerk to mail a separate notice to each household address to provide notice. And so I just wondered, should that also be included in the resolution? Or, I mean, certainly what's in the resolution is correct, but there's also this requirement of mailing.
So that is correct. That's state law, that it does require each municipality to inform every registered voter, not if they're only absentee voter. And Susie, the county clerk, Susie Canine, indicated that is going to be left to the local municipalities. It's just too much for her to handle. So by law, we have to send out a separate notice to everyone, which it says in the agreement. And I mean, I'll refer to Jim. I don't know that it needs to be in the resolution or not, but
That I know.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, that's a kind of an age-old question, what goes in the resolution. I don't think it's necessary because you're really approving the agreement and it's in the agreement. I mean, you could, it's not inconsistent, it's just not complete. But there's a lot of things that are in the resolution, they're just background to make sense of the agreement, so I'm comfortable. By not having it doesn't mean you're not gonna do it.
Right, my concern was it just might be confusing because of in the
Yeah,
resolution, it's.
we went over this, I don't think it's confusing to
Okay.
Sarah as to what she has to do in the county. I think the more
Okay.
confusing part to cities maybe throughout the state is. You technically, I shouldn't even, I almost don't even want to tell you, but you don't have to do this. You could do it yourself. We're highly encouraging you not to. But it's new for everybody, but I'm comfortable with the resolution as written.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wagner.
I have a question, actually.
Sure.
Do we anticipate, for Sarah, I think, for Shane, do we anticipate this simplifying our elections? So having, I think we talked about maybe moving it here on site. Because there's a cost of that, and if we've got early voting, this version and in the mail, it seems like there's gonna be less of a burden on the day of.
so that's the unknown, but yes, so Michigan, we now have the hybrid 3 options where people can do the early voting. And this again is only required for statewide and federal elections. And I don't plan to do local because it's not required and that's just more cost. But right, if people do the in-person, it's less people perhaps coming in on election day. And there's also the AV ballots, which we have the AV counting board. So I would foresee it potentially decreasing the numbers walking to the doors on election day.
Mr. Moore.
So first of all, Ms. Beck, kudos to you for signing up twice to be the site supervisor.
Well,
My question,
that wasn't, they asked, so there's an issue going on in Little Traverse Township with the clerk, if you guys aren't aware, and the county clerk reached out and asked if I'd be willing to do it a second day. So I said yes, but we're not necessarily, I don't have to find workers for both days. They kind of encourage each municipality to find 3 workers for the site supervisor day that they're overseeing, so.
so in addition to the kudos, my associated question is, like, is there training involved for this? Or is it essentially, because it's so new with the 9 days of early voting, or is it just kind of a replication of what you would ordinarily be doing on election day?
So I actually had training on Friday from the Bureau, and there will be a lot of training coming forward before the presidential primary for anyone that will be working. So even though you're certified for the 2 years, the requirement, the county clerk is encouraging highly, along with myself, to attend those trainings, because there is going to be different procedures than what we're used to for the in-person, based on security, and you're not balancing every night. You don't run the results until the night of election day. So there's a lot of pieces to it. So yes, there will be training.
Thank you. Thank you for all your efforts to keep our elections safe and fair.
You're welcome.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Sarah Beck. I learned a tremendous amount from reviewing this information. And that Bear Creek Township has 592 more voters than we do. I had no idea. I thought we were number 1.
No, we have the most precincts, the most work, but
Thank you so much.
Ready? Are you ready for a motion?
Anybody?
So moved.
The motion from Ms. Demore, do I have a second?
I'll be happy to second, Mayor.
A motion from Ms. Demore and a second from Ms. Walker. Any other discussion? I go to city clerk Beck Baroll.
Demore. Aye. Walker.
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Next is
Thank you.
discussion. Discuss ward and city conventions and provide feedback to city staff. I'll start with Miss Walker.
I thought this year's moving the date was excellent, a little earlier than the July ward conventions that we were having. I thought it provided opportunity for more people to participate, so I'm all for making that a permanent change.
Other council feedback. Mr. Moore.
I agree with what Ms. Walker just said. I would give two additions of input that I received from constituents. One was, why do we have to do this at 8 o'clock? Now, I understand it's in our charter.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if that's something we should look at sometime when we're having an election anyway, not a special election, but to kind of get that changed to an hour that's more suitable. Because I think that negatively impacts attendance for people. And then the second input I received from a constituent, actually more than one, was would it be possible, and this is before my time, so you guys might be able to speak to this, to go back to more intimate settings? Like, for example, Ward 1 is in the cafeteria at the middle school, and there's usually 12 people, and I think it used to be right here. And I don't know about the other wards, but that was the other input that I received, was to consider spaces that would be more conducive to the smaller groups and just more comfortable for an exchange of ideas. Thank you.
Wagner.
I appreciate the process. I would even just consider it moving further, but I'm okay with the June date. And I really appreciate we're talking about this now and not 6 months from now. It's way ahead of when it's come up, and it was difficult to change from July to June even last year. So I'm open. I like the more intimate setting as well. We're also in the gymnasium. We did for COVID.
Is that why?
Yes. Or yeah, it was COVID. We were masked. We needed to spread people out.
Ward 2 has always been in the library at Ottawa School. It was moved this year for COVID's sake to the gymnasium.
If I can just make a comment, we partner with the schools and sometimes they're doing remodeling. So if it was in library, maybe they were remodeling, new flooring, new whatever. So we kind of go to the next best option. So if you guys don't like the schools, and I think Ward 4 was at the Spitler building.
No, it's at Sheridan, but ours is really.
No, it used to be, it used to be at the Spitler administration building, so. That's the only thing too, is we utilize the schools. If you don't like the schools, I'll have to kind of create different ideas, and perhaps there may be a cost to it, but if you guys want different locations, that's completely fine.
Ward 1 would be happy to return to this room.
And it was here, and COVID did move it to the gym because it wasn't enough spacing and we still had to have them by charter, so.
I'm sorry, I'm okay with the school. It's just the thought of it being in a more intimate setting is a nice thought, but I'm okay with it.
Miss Shumway, my predecessor, was one work convention where she moved it from inside to outside. So it's such a nice July day. And everybody was consensus there to take the meeting out. So there might be some room, some flexibility at the time of everybody gathered.
Good for the feedback.
Yeah, for the most part.
So essentially, June seems like the consensus, keep it earlier.
I have not received feedback one way or the other.
So we'll just kind of that third week in June, because we can't do it the weeks of our meetings.
And do it when school's probably in either, because that would become more complicated. When school's in session.
Right,
Did
because,
not do it, yeah.
right, as you can see, all the desks are stacked up, usually you can probably see that, so, but I mean, again, there's other options that I can research.
Is it just possible to move Ward 1 back here?
Yeah.
I mean, right,
Yeah,
that's
oh,
easier,
sure.
but the others that
Yep.
aren't utilizing another room here.
I'll defer to them for their locations.
Next is the adoption of a proposed resolution that would authorize the city manager and public safety director to execute a new 2024 to 2026 FOPLC collective bargaining agreement covering public safety officers division. I turned over to city manager Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. We have had great dialogue, feedback with the bargaining unit. With the Public Safety Officers Division, very collaborative discussions. To the point where they did not need to bring their business agent in. I did not feel like I needed to bring our labor attorney in. So just good collaborative discussions with obviously we had the director in the room as well. I coordinated with Audrey, our finance director, from the finance piece of it, but essentially the agreement boils down to 3-year agreement, goes from January 1st, 24 to December 31, 26. The 3 years include a 5, 4, and 4 wage increase. I thought we needed to do a little bit more than we've done in past years, just based on the current dynamics that we're all dealing with. We're all paying more for goods and services. So I thought that warranted a little bit of a larger bump, and we obviously use comparable data as well. And that was consistent with what our comparable communities were doing as well. So we did ask for increased contributions on the pension side. You can see that outlined in my memo as well. We did agree to a flat contribution into their MERS healthcare savings plan at $38.46 per pay, which equals about $1,000 per year per officer. I also thought it was important. Many communities do this. The community that I served in downstate did this, provided longevity bonuses. So as employees are here and have made this their career and our community their destination, to reward their longevity. So we have a longevity bonus incorporated within this collective bargaining agreement. And that's kind of it. We did also beef up the funeral leave from 3 days to 5 days for immediate family members, just to provide that extra time to grieve and recover before having to come back to work. So that's kind of the overall agreement. Again, I certainly thank the bargaining team, Director Carr, Audrey, for their outstanding work through this process. So it's in front of you for your consideration.
I appreciate the work on both sides of the process, and I motion to approve the collective, the 2024 to 2026 collective bargaining agreement.
Support.
A motion from Mr. Wagner, a second from Mr. Moore. Any other comments from council or questions? Public wish to weigh in on this, they have an opportunity to. There being none, I go to Ms. Beck for roll.
Wagner.
Yes.
Demore.
Aye.
Shields.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes. Now we're down to city council comments. I'll start with Ward 4, Ms. Walker.
No comments today, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Ward 3, Mr. Wagner.
The announcement from Mr. Wilmot about the peace vigil tomorrow night. he said 7 o'clock. I looked it up. It's actually 7:30. That was gonna be my announcement tonight. And it's at First Presbyterian Church. And they're working directly with Temple B'nai Israel and the Northern Michigan Interfaith Faith Common Ground Group.
Mr. Shields, Ward 2.
Thank you, Mayor. As looking over some reporting from the Energy Democracy Initiative at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance this last week. And this reporting is based on some reports from the Berkeley Labs and Department of Energy Sunshot Initiative on the distributed solar versus utility scale solar. And these studies show that the sweet spot for low cost solar development is in the middle, actually at the 5 to 10 megawatt range, and that even the 500 to 1,000 kilowatt range is economical and it is very competitive. And so as the city is now reconsidering the smaller scale solar development at the old landfill site, which would be in this range, these reports support that development of those would be beneficial economically for the city utility. And then you go to the report, is very fascinating. It goes on, it talks about why that is and how that's a lot of times in those rate studies that the cost of transmission and delivery is not usually included, and shows that in some examples where that 10% of adoption of distributed solar in the utility frame, that there's only marginal increases to a ratepayer costs. So at 10% adoption, which we're far from, only marginal increases in the ratepayer costs. So concerns about rate increases, I think, are a little overblown after reading this report, and so encourage the city to continue to look into this development at the landfill site, and if not there, potentially, I know there's students at the high school looking at putting solar panels on the roof of the high school, and that could be into that 5 megawatt range, or there, that sweet spot, as this report says. And if not that, then collaborating with some local municipalities. I think this report also talks about the value, not only economically, but the value to the local economy and how much money we can retain in electricity and generation by doing it here locally versus at a large utility scale firm downstate. Thank you.
Ward 1, Mr. Moore.
I just want to say that I appreciate all the efforts locally and beyond to affirm the right of all people to live in peace and to practice their faith in peace. Thank you.
First, to Ms. Walker. I met your challenge. I had lunch with Mr. Dave Troutman. I had to remind him that every piece of literature that he has sent me for the last 10, 12 years has no phone number and no address. And I said, it's very difficult to get a hold of people with no phone number and no address. And he does not text and he does not use email. So there we are.
He gave us his email.
Maybe, I don't know. Okay, you did. Okay, is he doing it now?
The most recent one.
I ran into to a gentleman walking down the river the other day who said he was working with Mr. Troutman on business cards and some other things. So maybe we got it going now. I had the opportunity, along with city manager in Ward 3, Representative Mr. Wagner, we met with the new council at Bay Harbor, John Emily, who is the new taking over charge of director of their board of groups. So we met with them last week. That was really great. And also we have an arts commission meeting. I'm sure you have several friends that you want to let know. 11 o'clock on Monday, the 23rd at Crooked Tree. And I think the city manager has one thing he'd like to add.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I should have added it to my report, but just a reminder, next Monday, the 23rd, here we'll have our work session on the short-term rental ordinance. Just as a reminder, that's 6 o'clock. And then I also wanted to briefly talk to council about potential consideration for moving our regular meeting, the first meeting in November, to, as we all know, elections are a heavy lift for a small work group. So to potentially consider moving our regular meeting up one day, I'm sorry, really 2 days, to Wednesday, the 8th of November, if that works for city council. This would provide, obviously, election day is a very long day. We have set up on the day before on the 6th, which is our meeting night. So if there was any consideration potentially to move our regular meeting up to Wednesday, the 8th, that would certainly be appreciated, if possible.
I didn't bring my calendar, so I'm unable to.
Okay.
I'll be in Wisconsin,
Okay.
7th and 8th.
If not, we will obviously continue to do what we've always done, and we can certainly make it work.
Is it possible to cancel it, or do we have business that needs to be attended?
Isn't that a budgetary?
Yeah, we'll have our first reading of the budget. We'll have, we need to have, well, based on what we did tonight, we'll be setting a public hearing for the special assessments. That'll need to happen that week as well. So
Other days that your people are available that week.
13th, that the Monday, the 13th, I'm open.
It'd be 2 Mondays. I don't have a problem with anything that we get. I'm flexible. I will make it work. So it's up to you guys. Mr. Wagner.
I agree with the 13th. I think that can be 2 weeks now.
Ms. Walker.
Yeah, I already have the month of November pretty heavily booked out, with the assumption that the 6th was gonna be our meeting and the 7th was election day. I'm trying to take a sabbatical for 2 weeks to the West Coast, so
Well, you don't have to.
Is it possible to problem solve this by like an outreach email,
Sure.
maybe? That would be helpful to me.
not reply to all, obviously.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
There being no further business before this council, I call this meeting adjourned. If you hurry home, you'll get there before